It's the summer holiday season with 702,
your number one news and talk station.
Another story making news headlines and just has us shaking our heads. 4 rhino died a gruesome death in a boma on a private game farm in the northwest this weekend. A photo shows, there's this photo going around on social media. It shows what appears to be 4 young rhino lying on the ground. They've now been dehorned. A 5th rhino survived the attack at the Bona game lodge between Klerksdorp and Wolmaranstad. No arrests have yet been made, but the rhino problem is still not under control. Every December, in fact, it's not just December, most months of the year, we have these horrible stories coming out. On the line is the chairperson of the Private Rhino Owners Association, Pelham Jones. Good morning, Pelham. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Ray, and good morning to your listeners.
Now, do we have any rhino figures for this year? What is the actual situation?
Well, Ray, we do not have official figures. Those are released by the Ministry, the Department of Environmental Affairs. However, from our own stats that we monitor during the course of the year, we have forecast that we will end the year in a very similar situation to where we were last year in terms of, in other words, losing some 1,100 odd animals. Ray, this is a tragedy. I mean, South Africa has got one of the finest conservation reputations in the world. We've got one of the most successful game industries in the world, and yet we don't seem to be able to pull this one under control. We have now, as a nation, lost well over 6,000 rhinos since the poaching tsunami began in 2008. Despite the figure that I quoted, whilst it is not showing an increase, it is also not showing a decrease. Our stats are showing us, however, that the attempts, the poacher incursions, are up, dependent on where you are in the country, between 30 and 40%. So it is not that the poaching onslaught is getting less. To the opposite, it is increasing on the most conservative scenario at 30%. And we are the numbers are static purely because, from a pure law enforcement point, I'm talking about private reserves, provincial and sandparks, are better than where we were in 2012 or whichever year. So the situation is becoming worse year on year. That's the harsh reality.
But why is this? I thought there was this massive concerted effort to stop this.
Well, yes, there is, and there are various security plan strategies which are being rolled out by SAPs and by government, etc. The harsh truth of the matter is that there is such a demand for rhino horn. The value of the commodity on the black market is such that it becomes, from a law enforcement point, almost impossible, because the value of the commodity is such that people are prepared to die whilst trying to steal or poach the product for the incredibly high return. So based on the principles of risk and reward, for every individual arrested or as the terminology is used, neutralized, there are another 10 willing to step forward to take his place. This is where CITES was for us very, very disappointing, insofar as range states who have a very successful history in conservation, like Swaziland, Zimbabwe, Namibia, particularly South Africa, our opinions meant very little during the conservation debates at CITES. The tragedy is we have seen very, very aggressive actions by quite radical animal rights organizations who own no rhino, but yet use the plight of the rhino as a platform to raise money. And they are very, very influential in many countries, including the USA and in the UK. And you see this absolutely bizarre situation of famous personalities, film stars, etc., attending to the burning of ivory, of rhino horn, etc., which means absolutely nothing in terms of reducing rhino poaching. The value of the commodity is now so high that these demand reduction campaigns simply do not work. And this is the problem that we are faced with.
Pelham, is it not time for the National Intelligence Agency to up their game? Because obviously you have these people in other countries who are, like you say, making it very attractive for people just to join in the whole thing and make some money. Isn't it time to target the sources of this massive problem?
You raise a very good point there. Insofar as we have been frustrated, insofar as that there has not been enough attention given to those key syndicate bosses. If one looks at the demise of the rhino population in Zimbabwe, for example, that was coordinated principally by 11 individuals operating out of Zambia. Now, we have a very similar situation here, where there are hundreds of poachers who are active at greater and lesser degree, all being controlled by a few syndicate bosses. Some of them, unfortunately, are not within South Africa and make it so much more complicated insofar as you need the cooperation of Interpol and other international law enforcement agencies. And this is where we need to go. We need to up our game on the international arena to start to bring these syndicate bosses to heel. We obviously, the Private Rhino Owners Association, have got a somewhat different opinion, whereby we say that as long as the product is illegal, these individuals will continue to operate. The moment you allow for a legal, controlled, and transparent supply, well, why would you go and buy your booze at a bootlegger outlet or on a street corner when you can buy it transparently, legitimately, and without fear of prosecution? So we are seeing now 100% of the benefit of the illegal actions going to the criminal syndicates, whilst we, South Africa, sit with about 30 tons of rhino horn, which could be released to the market, which could be used, that revenue could be used to provide for better security, law enforcement, and conservation efforts. And this is where fundamentally, when one looks at the society structure, we are a divided group of conservationists insofar as some are saying that is not the way to go. We, however, the rhino owners, and that is across the board, are unanimous that the failed strategies of the CITES ban, which has been in place since 1977, has not saved the life of a single rhino.
Yeah, a bit of a problem, it really is. So, in other words, you're saying saturate the market with the rhino horn that you've got, therefore there's no massive demand, and therefore this stops.
Well, not necessarily saturate, because the saturation would be a short-term situation. We are saying that from natural mortalities, from dehorning, which is now a common phenomena in most of the reserves, with the exception of Kruger National Park, we have enough to be able to provide a managed and sustained control, and via utilization of DNA and all those other aspects, we're able to ensure that blood horns do not enter the market, that there is accountability, transparency, and so on. And the key issue is that we all know the value of the product. Unfortunately, the product has also now entered the luxury goods market, whereas before the original use of rhino horn was for the traditional Chinese medicine market. That has now changed into two other categories. The one is luxury goods, as in the form of different kinds of jewelry, the so-called libation cups, as well as status symbol and investment. So as long as the product has this unrealistically high valuation, we're not going to be able to stop it. So we are saying, by supplying a product to the market, let's say at $10,000 a kilogram, which is a value that we believe we can achieve. To compete in that environment, the criminal element has to come in at a price below that of, let's say, $6,000 a kilogram. So that way, we believe we can progressively start to win back the illegal market and provide a sustained control from stockpiles that we have already. As you know, rhino horn regrows on the same principle as a human fingernail or hair. So without having any detrimental impact on the animal, they can be dehorned every 18 months. None of us went into rhino conservation because we wanted to get into the rhino horn trade. But after, 30, 40 years now of seeing failed strategies whereby, if one looks at the African continent, we have 23 countries that have lost all their rhino. Sure. We have some 10 countries that still have rhino. I'm talking about Africa, obviously.
Yeah.
But their populations are so small. Uganda, at this moment in time, has got 16 rhino left. So of the 10 countries still with rhino, only 5 of them have got meaningful or viable populations. So clearly, what we have been doing up until now is not working. This is an Africa a problem. This is not unique to South Africa. And we really have to sit with our colleagues in the SADC community and find uniformity and solutions in areas of cooperation from law enforcement to aspects related to trade.
There's an SMS here. It says, what happened to using dye with a rhino horn to stop it from being taken from the animal?
Well, that was a complete failure. First of all, there were 2 aspects. The one situation was, as part of that treatment, there was allegedly poison pumped into the horn, which was proven to be a fallacy. It was unsuccessful because the pure density of the horn, you cannot. It's an impervious structure, for want of a better word. You cannot pump any liquid into a rhino horn. Secondly, the aspect of dyeing it meant absolutely nothing. There were situations down in the low felt of animals being treated one day, and within a week to 2 weeks, those animals had been poached. So the poacher has total disregard for things such as poison and dye, because the product can still be taken and be worked in their workshops and be turned into products such as jewelry, etc. So unfortunately, that did not work.
Chairperson of the Private Rhino Owners Association, Pelham Jones, I hope we're not going to be having the same discussion this time next year.
I sincerely hope not. I must tell you, it is very, very disillusioning for us, particularly our APU teams, all of whom are still obviously on duty over this festive season. And we're really going to have to start to work out of the box to find solutions. But thank you for your concern on this, Ray.
Thanks. That's Pelham Jones, the chairperson of the Private Rhino Owners Association. And it's very concerning. It really is, because every single day, or not every day, but almost every day, in Eyewitness News, we see another story of rhinos being butchered. And the latest one was terrible, because these were baby rhinos, and they were caught, when they were not caught, they were being housed, or they were inside this enclosure, and these guys got inside and they killed them. And you have this picture here of these 4 baby rhinos. It's absolutely terrible.